Hey there everybody, it's your host nirex and welcome back to C++ beginner course. So in this video we will be talking a little bit about variables. The last video we talked about data types. This one is all about these guys, variables, and a little touch up on the naming convention. Okay, we will learn a lot more about naming convention right here in the Hungarian notation, but yeah, right now we're just going to touch it a little bit slightly, smoothly, and with a lot of sensation. I'm sorry for doing that. I didn't mean to. I mean, I actually meant to. But yeah, let's get right into it then. So, unlike math, variables in computers don't suck ass. So, let's get right into it. Inside math, when we want to declare a variable, when we were little children, when we want to do something like that, teacher gave us something like this. Okay, 2 plus something is equal to 3. Now this something we had to fill in, right? We had to calculate it, we had to make some operations, and we had to figure out what would go into this guy right here. And the answer is, it's just goddamn obvious, 1. So 3 minus 2, 1. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. So this was the variable, kind of a variable in math when we were young. When we got older, this guy was renamed into x, right? The first variable that we learned to name, the first thing that we recognized as a variable was x. So instead of just having that there, we would learn about this, and we would learn how to solve this guy, how to solve x. Now, computers also share the same thing. After all, math is the father of computers. Math is the rule of this universe and the computers. So within the realm of math, we say something like this, and everybody understands it, everybody's happy. But in computers, when I say something like this, so if I say the top lane, this guy is the realm of math, math is happy. But computers, when I say something like this, they're definitely not happy. You should already know the answer from the last video. If I say something like this, computers like, what the heck, man? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any clue what this is. So, computers are dumbasses, unlike us humans. And they need to be told absolutely everything. Now, data types here are what come into play, okay? They are the guys that come into play. But we don't really care about that right now in this instance of this video, okay? In this instant. What I want to talk about right now is to give you an intuition into what variables actually are. So think of them as these little boxes, like this. They can hold some value. They have a name. And they have something else, a type. Now these two guys right here, these are specific to all variables in math, in your human brain. Yeah, I'm definitely a human and I do human things. So in your brain and in computers, these two are, universal. But this guy is definitely for computers. So only computers need types. Now, as I said right here, in math, this guy is okay, everybody's happy, everybody cheers, but in this computer world, computers would be like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So we definitely need to give it a type, we definitely need to give it a name, and this value is optional at first. We will talk about that too in this video. So value is optional, at the beginning. Type and name are required. Now, let's get into the coding part. Now, you already have your projects open, I hope. If you don't, pause the video, open your projects, get going. Now, if I say x equals 2, there's definitely going to be an error, okay? It's like, yeah, I don't know what the heck. This declaration has no storage class or type specifier. So this is a nerd computer geek language. If we translate it back to human written and said English, this would mean that it doesn't know what it is. Is it a number? Is it a character? Is it a name? What the heck is this? It doesn't know. So we, as good programmers, should tell it what it is. We can just say something as simple as an int, all right? This guy is an integer number. If you remember the data types, we had simple things like int, float, double, char, bool. We have a bunch more, but these are the only things that we're going to actually care about. So I have to give it a type in order for this C++ to be happy. Now, there's a thing that I need to touch, but it's not that big of a deal for it to have a separate video. So if I say something like this, there's going to be an issue. The reason to that is we always need to put a semicolon at the end of most lines. Not all of them, most of them. And we will get to where we should and shouldn't put them. So if I don't put a semicolon here and I hover my mouse over this, it's going to tell me that it expects a semicolon. Now, the reason to that is obviously we didn't put one here. And yes, it might not give us an error, but it does expect one here. Now, this is the basics of how things work. I can say int x equals 2. What it means is that we are declaring a variable, we're making a variable that is named x of type int, which has the value of 2. So this is as simple as it gets. It's just easy peasy lemon squeezy. We have another integer named y, which is equal to 3. We can have anything else we want. We can have a float f equals, I'm gonna be super cliche, 3.14. We can also have a double, d equals, again, 3.14. But the difference between a double and a float is that we need to always put an f. You know, it's good practice to put an f at the end. We will talk about why we should put an f at the end of a float number when we get to pointers, not just yet. Yeah, don't worry, guys. Pointer is just a huge topic to cover, and don't worry about it. It's easy. It's not that hard. Nothing is. You know, with enough practice, everything is easy. I can also say something like bool b equals true, and it's just as simple as that. Char c equals a. So this is how we create variables. We will get to using them soon. We're just going to create them now. So here's the thing about variables. There's really nothing more to cover about variables except the naming convention. So naming variables. How do we name variables? Well, there are a couple of rules and a couple of guidelines. The rules are requirement. They're required to obey. Okay, you are required to obey them. But the guidelines, they're better to, go by the guidelines rather than not. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the rules. There are a couple of requirements. All right, you need to do these. You need to obey these. So rule number 1, names cannot start with numbers. They cannot, they shouldn't. If I say something like bool 1b equals false, there's definitely going to be an issue here. Expected an identifier in human language is that this is not a valid name. Rule number 2, names cannot start with symbols. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this. I can say something like bool and b, but yeah, let's not talk about that one just yet. We will get to them when we will talk about that when we get to references. We will talk about this guy when we get to pointers. We will talk about this guy when we get to WinAPI. But here, you can't just say something like, parentheses open b, or something like @b. It's just gonna mess things up. So again, issue here, unrecognized token. It's another thing for saying that it's all messed up. You cannot do that. Rule number 3, names can have underscore. Also, well, yeah, they can also start. Let me just not write it. It's just gonna go out of the screen. So names can have underscore. We can say bool b underscore equals false, or we can say bool underscore b equals true. So there can definitely be underscore anywhere you want and as many as you want in your variable name, but it's really not good practice to do that. Okay, so these are the three important rules, the three commandments of creating a variable. Okay, now let's go for the guidelines. So these were just the rules. These are rules that we need to obey. Guidelines better than not. So it's better for us to go by the guidelines than not. Now, so guideline says there's a lot to talk about, but I'm just gonna talk about two of them. So we got camel case. Whoa, bro, it's camel, baby. Yeah, there we go. And we got snake case. So I'm just gonna tell you what variables and camel case and snake case have in relation. So when creating a variable, it is always recommended in this language to use camel case. Okay. Now camel case says, separate letters, separate words with this capital letter. So camel is one word, case is another word. For instance, we use this C in case as a capital to separate the words. But the first word always comes with a small letter. So I can say int enemies left, or I don't know, amount of apples, or something like that, in basket. Now this is a bad example because it's huge. This name is just terrible, but sometimes you just have to. So amount of apples in basket is like 10. All right, I'm using camel case. Now it's recommended use in C++. It's recommended for everybody to use this kind of a thing in C++. I can also say something like amount of apples equals 10. Use in Python. So don't use this guy in C++. This is not that good, but this guy is better. So use this dude in C++. Don't use this dude in C++. Use this dude in Python. It's called snake case. So yeah. And that's basically it. So what we learned today was variables, naming conventions, and some guidelines and rules. So rules, just to recap, are we cannot start with a number, we can't start with a symbol, we can use underscore, but better not. And guidelines were we can use camel case and snake case. Now camel case is like this, as you can see. So words are separated by a capital letter, and these capital letter is the start of another word, except the first word. Okay, this cannot be amounts. There are some exceptions. We will get to them. We will talk to them in classes, not just yet. Now, amount of apples, snake case, obviously, is to separate the words with an underscore, and definitely use all small letters. There should never ever be an upper score letter here. It should always be, lowercase. And that's it. That's basically it for all of this video. As you can see, it wasn't all that hard. We learned a little bit about variables, naming conventions, and all that good stuff. So, and one more point I need to make. This is not just limited to variables. You cannot name anything like this. You cannot name classes, functions, structs, enumeration types, nothing. Okay, this is just a basic naming convention for all of the C++ world. You can't start a number, you can't start a variable name with a number. And so that's basically it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, maybe leave a comment, maybe even subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.